Hello my happy readers, it's Bedtime Stories with Issy. Are you ready to share a new story? Well, I have chosen a rather fruity and healthy story to share. The title is Captain Satsuma Has Landed. If you have this book at home, you can read along with me. The author, the person who has written this story, is J.L. Hobson. And the illustrator, the person who has drawn all the pictures, is Russell Becker. Now, Captain Satsuma heads the intelligence service 5 daily. He's been called upon by King Edward to rescue his brother, Evil Spud Mouldy. I wonder if Captain Satsuma and his elite team will save the day. Shall we read and find out? Captain Satsuma has landed. Introduction. Planet Superseed was home to the Frugee's living fruit and vegetable characters. A Frugee potato called Edward was Superseed's elected king. Everyone on the planet respected and loved the king, who was kind and thoughtful. But over time, King Edward's half-brother, Maris, became jealous of him and started to turn bad. Then he changed his name to Evil Spud Mouldy. To make matters worse, Mouldy stole a pod ship and disappeared from Planet Superseed. The heartbroken King Edward instructed his intelligence service 5 daily to find his brother before something terrible happened to him. Chapter 1. A desperate rescue mission is launched. At 5 daily headquarters, Super Agent Captain Satsuma was seated at his desk when the office door burst open.
Mouldy's ship has been located. It's heading for Gnome Island on planet Earth,
said Pear, a fellow intelligence officer. Grab your belongings, we've got to go, Captain Satsuma replied. Can you ask Miss Sweetcorn, Undercover Carrot and Masked Pepper to meet us at the pod ship station in 10 minutes? Pear, Sweetcorn, Carrot and Pepper were the Frugee 4, Captain Satsuma's elite team. With their pod ship hurtling through space towards Gnome Island, an anxious King Edward spoke to Captain Satsuma and his team from Superseed's Mission Control Center. My brother's very gullible, so goodness knows what sort of bother he could get into, said King Edward. Please find him and bring him home safely. Chapter 2. Devious plans materialize. Gnome Island was a beautiful place with thousands of trees and lush green fields, all surrounded by its wonderful coastline. It was a haven for the birds and bees and butterflies who flew amongst the thriving plants and crops. Health and happiness were in abundance for everyone who lived there, until one day everything changed. A horrid man by the name of Count Rubbish from the mainland had tricked the gnomes and elves into believing he was the rightful owner of Gnome Island. He had produced a forged document drafted by his crooked cousin, Certificate. The document stated that the Count's great-great-grandfather, Pompous Binbag III, had discovered the island in the first place. As his rightful heir, Count Rubbish now owned Gnome Island. Having no proof otherwise, the helpless gnomes and elves were left to endure the Count's despicable actions. He quickly upset them by digging up their favourite park, telling them it was needed for landfill. Days later, he dug a massive hole on the school field, though he wasn't prepared for the surprise that would await him on his return there. Chapter 3. Mouldy arrives. Speeding towards Gnome Island, the incompetent Mouldy was in a real tizzy. Sweat dripped from his brow as he struggled to control the pod ship. When his glasses began to steam up, he pushed the wrong lever on the control panel, causing the ship to nosedive. Now, in a blind panic, Mouldy had little choice but to hit the emergency button. The ship juddered, then spun before crashing with an ear-shattering thud straight into Count Rubbish's hole. Wrenching open the podship door, Mouldy miraculously staggered out of the wreckage. Around him, plumes of dust and smoke rose into the sky above. Creaking noises coming from the hinges of the ship's door created an eerie type atmosphere. "Phew!" gasped Mouldy, highly relieved even though he found himself trapped inside the hole. From above, the sound of a car engine could be faintly heard. Moments later, the slamming of its door was followed by the deafening tones of a voice shouting down at him. "Of all the places to dump that heap of junk, you moron!" This was Count Rubbish, his hat and coat filthy from the dust swirling around. "Get rid of that thing now!" the Count yelled. Not wishing to give the impression of being intimidated or frightened, Mouldy shouted back, "Chill out, big nose, or else! No one messes with me. I'm Evil Spud Mouldy, a real tough guy from a faraway place. I'm on the run, you know." "What did you do? Duff up a couple of sprouts?" replied the sarcastic Count. "No, far more outrageous than that," said Mouldy. "I've developed an instant secret potion that can turn all fruit and vegetable rotten like me. The potion's right here in my overnight bag. Don't come near me though, it's highly dangerous." "Interesting," said the opportunist Count Rubbish. "I'm sure we can soon sort out our little misunderstanding. Let me get a rope and pull you out of there." Grateful to accept the Count's offer, Mouldy grabbed the end of rope thrown to him. After a few hefty pulls from Count Rubbish, he emerged from the hole. "I'm Count Rubbish, owner of this island," said the Count as he opened the passenger door to his car. "I've got a smashing little place where you can stay whilst you get yourself sorted out. Jump in and I'll take you there." After a short journey, Mouldy found himself standing next to a dilapidated old caravan. "Here we are," said the proud-looking Count Rubbish. "Rather smart, isn't it?" Unlocking the caravan door, he stepped inside, pushing a pile of bin bags out of the way in the process. Mouldy clambered over the bags and sat down on a torn bench-type seat. Count Rubbish smiled before reaching into his jacket pocket and producing 5 sparkling gold coins. Tossing them over to Mouldy, he said, "I could use a clever little fella like you. There will be many more of these coins coming your way if you help me. I expect you're going to need plenty of them in order to get that spaceship repaired. So, what do you say?" "Okay then," replied Mouldy, goggling at the gold. As the caravan door banged shut, Mouldy peered through the net curtains of his new home and watched Count Rubbish drive away. Tired and exhausted, he lay down amongst the pile of bin bags. Chapter 4. Mouldy has a problem to solve. Everyday life had, on the whole, returned to the island, with no sightings of any occupants from the damaged and abandoned spacecraft. The gnomes and elves believed Count Rubbish must have been behind everything that had happened. The island's inhabitants knew little about other planets, never mind that a visitor had arrived from one. But Count Rubbish certainly knew otherwise, and he was about to take advantage of it too. Already the owner of a chain of shops on the mainland, Count Rubbish found the thought of a business on Gnome Island very appealing. But when his shop on the island opened, trade had been very slow, and he needed to do something about it. Arriving at Mouldy's caravan, Count Rubbish stepped inside and spelled out his plans.
I have a problem I'd like you to sort out for me, he said. Too many of the islanders are shopping at Freddie Elf's shop instead of mine, and it's costing me money. I wonder if you could deal with that little twerp for me.
Of course, replied Mouldy. What do you want me to do?
I thought you could use your potion on the fruit and vegetables he sells, said Count Rubbish. When his stock goes rotten, he'll have nothing to sell, and all his customers will have to shop with me instead. What a genius I am!
Mouldy flinched for a moment before clearing his throat. Inside his bag were nothing more than his toothbrush and toothpaste and a pair of pyjamas. Composing himself, he declared, "No problem, that's an easy task for someone like me."
"Excellent,"
replied Count Rubbish, letting out a wicked laugh. Flinging open the caravan door, he shouted out,
"You two, come here now."
A large gnome, sporting a black eye, accompanied by a cheeky-looking little pixie, stepped inside the caravan.
"This is Bruiser Gnome and Stinky Sock Pixie, my staff," said Count Rubbish. "Bruiser's borrowing my car to take you to the elf shop."
"Whoa!" said Bruiser Gnome, rubbing his chin and staring in disbelief at Mouldy. "Who'd have thought you could grow potatoes that big?"
"I don't think he'd taste very nice, though," said Stinky Sock Pixie, screwing his face up as he spoke. "Looks like he's going off to me."
"Just watch it, Shorty," snapped the insulted Mouldy. "I'm a Kung Flu expert, you know."
"How on earth have I got involved with this idiot?"
muttered Count Rubbish to himself before turning to Bruiser and Stinky Sock.
"Shut up, you two," he told them. "Evil Spud Mouldy here will be in charge tonight, so do everything he tells you to. Now, wait outside until I'm ready."
Dwarfing Mouldy in size, Count Rubbish bent over him before whispering in a sinister tone,
"I forgot to mention earlier that ship of yours has been taken away for scrap metal."
Seeing Mouldy's reaction to this news, the Count made a snide comment.
"I was hoping you'd understand. We wouldn't want you trying out some of those Kung Flu moves on me, would we?"
Grinning from ear to ear, the Count said,
"I'll see you later then."
Chapter 5. A Textbook Landing. The pod ship carrying Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 entered the Earth's atmosphere.
"Engines 1 and 2 switching from autopilot,"
announced Miss Sweetcorn. "I'll take over from here," said Captain Satsuma. "Everyone prepare yourselves for landing." Guiding the ship perfectly, the captain made a textbook landing, bringing the pod ship to rest in the remotest part of Gnome Island. Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 quickly unloaded their electric hoverbikes from the ship before gathering together in a circle.
"What's the plan?"
asked Undercover Carrot, tilting his dark glasses as he spoke.
"Are we going to split up and search for Mouldy?"
"No, we'll stick together," replied the captain. "We don't know what to expect, so just be careful. There won't be much time before it's too dark to start our search," said Masked Pepper. "I'll get out our night vision goggles ready in case we need them." "Good thinking," said Captain Satsuma. "You all know what we're here to do." The team then high-fived each other before climbing aboard their bikes. "Let's go!" announced the captain. Chapter 6. Trouble in Store for Freddy Elf. Darkness was beginning to fall as Evil Spud Mouldy and Bruiser Gnome stood under a streetlight near Freddy Elf's shop.
"There's a change of plans," said Mouldy. "One of you distracts the elf whilst the other one quickly fills his pockets with fruit and vegetables. Give me the car keys and I'll be round to collect you in 5 minutes.
"I thought you were going to use your potion in the shop," said the concerned Bruiser. "Does Count Rubbish know about this, and that you'll be driving his car?"
"Yes, of course," replied
Mouldy, lying through his teeth.
"He must have forgotten to mention it. Now hurry up and give me the keys."
Handing over the car keys, the reluctant Bruiser Gnome crossed the road and joined Stinky Sock Pixie. The two of them peered through the window of Freddy Elf's shop. Outside, the streets were deserted, so no one spotted Bruiser pressing on the door handle. Inside, an oblivious Freddy was so engrossed filling his shelves, he didn't notice Bruiser and Stinky Sock lurking. Before Freddy could react, Bruiser Gnome and Stinky Sock Pixie were inside. A sniggering Stinky Sock Pixie peeled off his smelly socks and began waving them around. Freddy immediately dropped his box of bananas and frantically tried to open a window to get rid of the smell. Meanwhile, with Freddy distracted, Bruiser Gnome, who was overwhelmed by the sight of so much inviting food, started pulling stock from the shelves and throwing it into a nearby trolley. Outside, the gentle sound of electric hoverbikes could just about be heard. Undercover Carrot had brilliant eyesight, and as the bikes were passing, he spotted the disturbance inside the shop. Carrot signalled to his colleagues, and within seconds the bikes were grounded and the team ready for action. Captain Satsuma was first to burst through the shop door, followed by Cape Pear and Miss Sweetcorn. With her cape flapping behind her, Pear cried out, "Take that, you little pest!" as she squirted Stinky Sock with her special Pear Freshener Spray. The startled Pixie let go of his socks and dashed for cover. Captain Satsuma whipped out his Pip Blaster. He aimed at Bruiser Gnome, hitting him flush on the backside. "Bullseye!" yelled out the captain. Stinky Sock Pixie decided to make a dash for it to escape. Scooping his socks up, he rushed outside. But Masked Pepper and Undercover Carrot were waiting for him. Pepper fired his pea shooter, knocking the Pixie off his feet and into a nearby dustbin.
"Marvellous work, Pepper,"
said Carrot. Bruiser Gnome, his backside still stinging and his face red with rage, moved towards Captain Satsuma.
"Not so fast,"
said Miss Sweetcorn, picking up a heavy rolling pin which she dropped on Bruiser Gnome's foot. With Bruiser hopping around, Captain Satsuma saw his chance and sprang forward, producing his favourite move, the Satsuma Roll. Bruiser was knocked backwards through the doorway, ending up on top of Stinky Sock Pixie, who had just climbed out of the dustbin.
Great work, Captain Satsuma!
Pear yelled out. Bruiser and Stinky Sock frantically jumped up and tore off up the road, with Undercover Carrot and Masked Pepper leading the chase. Suddenly, a large black car roared past, covering Carrot and Pepper in thick smoke. The car pulled up by Bruiser Gnome and Stinky Sock Pixie, who scrambled in through an open door. Mounting the pavement, the car then sped off, leaving Undercover Carrot and Masked Pepper coughing as it disappeared into the distance. Chapter 7. Captain Satsuma is a little squirt. Captain Satsuma, together with Pear and Miss Sweetcorn, had jumped aboard their hoverbikes and were hot in pursuit of the fleeing vehicle. Looking out of the car's rear-view window, Bruiser Gnome could see the bikes closing fast.
"They're after us!"
he spluttered, still panting for breath as he spoke.
"Go faster!"
he told Mouldy, who had never even driven a car before.
"What happened?" shouted Mouldy. "Why did it take you so long?" "Because Bruiser's so greedy," cried out Stinky Sock. "Oh no, he couldn't just grab a couple of things. He had to try and bring a trolley full. In the end, all we got was one lousy plum that had rolled inside my sock when I dropped it."
Mouldy's heart sank. However, his main concern was trying to control the big gas-guzzling car. Swerving all over the road, he somehow reached the rear entrance to Count Rubbish's shop. Shooting through the open-gated entrance at high speed, Mouldy clipped the wall, knocking off one of the car's wing mirrors in the process. Desperate to stop, he slammed on the brake pedal as hard as he could. He then leapt from the car and began furiously hammering on Count Rubbish's office door.
"Ah, how did it go?"
asked the excited Count upon opening the door.
"I'll tell you later,"
answered Mouldy, his heart pounding.
"I need to hide before they see me." "Who sees you?" replied the Count, mystified.
"My planet's intelligence service, 5 daily, that's who," answered Mouldy, shaking with fear.
"Out of my way, you fool,"
said the Count, snatching the car keys from Mouldy's hand. Bruiser Gnome and Stinky Sock Pixie had already scarpered as Count Rubbish climbed into his car. Starting the engine, he looked straight ahead to see the cool and calm figure of Captain Satsuma, with steely eyes focused firmly on the car. A sickening grin quickly appeared on Count Rubbish's face.
"Right, you little squirt," he screamed. "You're about to become orange squash."
As the car headed straight for him, the fearless Captain Satsuma opened his waistcoat. Using his jet juice sprayers, he covered the windscreen in orange juice. With his vision totally obscured, the Count missed Captain Satsuma by centimetres before careering head-on into a skip. Plastic bottles, tin cans and food waste were flung in every direction. Inside the car, the driver's airbag had inflated, pinning Count Rubbish to his seat. Captain Satsuma shouted over to the stricken Count, "Have you only just passed your driving test?" This wound Count Rubbish up even more. Reaching into the side pocket of his car, he pulled out a screwdriver before jabbing it into the airbag. Exploding with such force, the airbag blew the driver's side door off, leaving the hapless Count looking totally dumbfounded. Captain Satsuma fastened his waistcoat and calmly walked away.
"You'll pay for this!"
cried out Count Rubbish, who was still trying to wrestle himself free from his car seat. Captain Satsuma just kept walking, treating the Count's threat with utter contempt. Chapter 8. Stinky Sock gets his collar felt. Seizing his opportunity to escape, Mouldy had climbed through the rear window of the office before hiding behind a pile of boxes. To his horror, he heard voices nearby. Peering through a small gap between the boxes, he could see Cape Pear and Miss Sweetcorn. Worse still, Miss Sweetcorn had hold of Stinky Sock Pixie by the collar.
"We've caught this one!"
Cape Pear shouted over to the approaching Captain Satsuma.
"Carrot and Pepper have gone after the gnome." "Let me go!"
cried out Stinky Sock Pixie.
"It's not me you want, it's that Evil Spud Mouldy. He told us to do the job."
"Where is he now?" asked Captain Satsuma.
"I've no idea," answered Stinky Sock. "You'd better find him quickly though, because when Count Rubbish gets hold of him, that big Spud's going to end up as chips."
"On your way," Captain Satsuma said, as Miss Sweetcorn released her hold on Stinky Sock's collar. As the Pixie scurried away, Undercover Carrot and Masked Pepper reappeared. "No sign of the gnome," said Carrot. "Don't worry," Captain Satsuma replied. "We need to get back to the pod ship and inform the King's private secretary, Arthur Cucumber, of our progress so far." Seeing Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 leave, Mouldy crept out from his hiding place and headed off in the opposite direction. Just before midnight, Mouldy arrived back at his caravan. Opening his overnight bag, he took out some apples before bouncing 6 of them up and down on the caravan floor. When he had finished, the apples looked badly bruised and out of shape. Suddenly, his concentration was disturbed by the sound of footsteps approaching outside. Holding a saucepan aloft in his one hand, he moved towards the caravan door. Chapter 9. The potion really works. The caravan door flew open and in stepped a furious-looking Count Rubbish.
"I can explain,"
said the trembling Mouldy, putting the saucepan down on an empty shelf.
"You'd better,"
replied the Count, rubbing his hands together as he spoke.
"Look, it works,"
said the nervous Mouldy, sweat dripping from his brow.
"I used it on these earlier,"
picking up one of the bruised apples.
"The apples I didn't use it on are fine,"
he continued, pointing over to the 6 good apples. Pondering for a moment, Count Rubbish began to calm down as he inspected the apples. Taken in by Mouldy's deceit, the Count changed his expression and a sly grin appeared across his face before he said,
"Splendid! I've got some grub-infested lettuce I found in a skip earlier. Together with those bruised apples, they'll be perfect for my shop. Now, let me take a closer look at that potion of yours."
"Not until you give me lots more gold coins," replied Mouldy.
"Why don't you come along to my shop and we'll discuss things there,"
said the Count, twisting his moustache vigorously.
"Bring those bruised apples along with you."
"Shall I bring the good ones too?" asked Mouldy.
"Certainly not," replied the Count, "as if I'd be seen selling that sort of thing. I have my reputation to keep up."
Chapter 10. The culprit is identified. Feverish excitement, tinged with nervousness, was spreading around Gnome Island. Some gnomes and elves chose to stay indoors, whilst others flocked to Freddy's elf shop, desperate to hear his version of events firsthand and get a description of these heroic invaders. Freddy captivated everyone with his detailed account, as his shop lights glinted down on his bald head. Captain Satsuma and the Frugee Four were heading to Freddy's shop too, to see if he was okay after the previous night's ordeal. Arriving outside, they were greeted with cheering and applause from a small group that had gathered. Once inside the shop, an over-the-moon Freddy rushed over to greet them.
"I can't thank you all enough," he said. "I was peering from behind my cheese counter, watching everything."
"No problem at all," replied Captain Satsuma.
"I'm still recovering from the shock, you know. I was telling the one of you who popped back last night how shaken I was," continued Freddy.
"But not one of us had the chance to come back," said Master Pepper, confused.
"Oh, is he not with you?" said Freddy. "The little fellow with spiky hair and glasses came in just before I closed, asking if he could take a dozen apples for forensic testing to identify the culprits. Anyway, we had a nice chat, though he seemed in rather a hurry. He took the apples and bought some toothpaste, saying he needed a spare, and left."
"That'll be Mouldy," said Undercover Carrot. "What on earth is he up to?"
"Is there something wrong?" asked Freddy. "Didn't he bring the right toothpaste back for you?"
"No, everything's fine," said Captain Satsuma, who didn't want to alarm Freddy any more. "I'll speak with him later about it. We'd better be on our way, so see you soon."
"What on earth's going on?" asked Miss Sweetcorn. "A dozen apples and toothpaste? It doesn't make sense."
"You're right there," replied Captain Satsuma. "We need to get to Count Rubbish's shop straight away. Mouldy's behaving very strangely, and we need to find out why." Chapter 11. Count Rubbish is going to deliver. Arriving for work on his push bike, Stinky Sock Pixie viewed a window poster Count Rubbish had just put up. To the mischievous Pixie's high amusement, there was a pile of grub-infested lettuces with leftover fireworks attached to them, advertised as rocket salad. Luckily for Stinky Sock, Bruiser Gnome turned up just in time to save him from the fury of Count Rubbish, who was glaring with disbelief at the pixies giggling. Once inside the shop, Stinky Sock and Bruiser were greeted by a sheepish-looking Mouldy standing next to Count Rubbish.
"Yesterday's setbacks are not going to derail my plans," the Count told them. "Mouldy has explained everything to me. He's even accepted part of the blame for you two messing up."
"But it was him who—"
gasped Bruiser Gnome, who couldn't believe what he had just heard.
"Be quiet," said Count Rubbish. "If it wasn't for Mouldy, neither of you would have a job. Now, before I send you back to that elf shop, I've got something really exciting to show you."
Rubbing his hands together with a gleeful look on his face, Count Rubbish invited Mouldy, Bruiser and Stinky Sock to join him at the rear of the shop.
"I give you the turbo trolley," he snorted. "Our very own delivery vehicle."
Mouldy, Bruiser and Stinky Sock stood and stared in horror.
"That's a lawnmower engine tied on their back with string,"
said the amazed Bruiser Gnome. The engine had been secured to a rusty old shopping trolley from one of Count Rubbish's other shops, fitted with a steering wheel held on by cable ties, and an upturned bucket for a seat. The turbo trolley looked hideous and ridiculously unsafe.
"There wasn't room for a brake pedal," said Count Rubbish. "When you need to stop, just fling this over the side."
He held up a bag of house bricks which were tied to the trolley with string.
"As I've decided to promote you to the position of manager, you'll be doing the test drive,"
he told Mouldy.
"I'm overwhelmed,"
replied Mouldy, strutting over to the trolley, his ego massively boosted by Count Rubbish's announcement.
"That Jammy Mouldy makes a complete kibosh of everything yesterday, and now he gets promotion,"
Stinky Sock whispered to Bruiser Gnome.
"And he's only just started here. Count Rubbish tells me I'm useless every day, yet he hasn't promoted me. I've got a good mind to hand my notice in."
Chapter 12. Bruiser Gnome Can't Fasten His Trousers. Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 were fast approaching Count Rubbish's shop. Eager to try out his latest gadget, the Sumawang, the captain was in a determined mood. "It's a bit like a boomerang, but it goes a lot further and it comes back to me after it's hit its target," he said to Kate Pear, who was alongside him. Meanwhile, outside the Count's shop, the petrified-looking Mouldy had climbed into the turbo trolley. With his overnight bag across his shoulder, he sat down on the bucket seat.
"Right, you two, load the stock around him,"
Count Rubbish instructed Bruiser Gnome and Stinky Sock Pixie.
"My new meal deal needs promoting. 3 pies and 2 large bags of crisps will wow everyone. It's going to be big. Just you wait and see."
"It's certainly going to be big for you," Stinky Sock told Bruiser.
"You can't fasten your trousers properly after eating some of them."
"I know," replied Bruiser. "I didn't even find any meat in the first 2 pies I ate, just fat and gristle."
"Hurry up," shouted Count Rubbish. "We haven't got all day. Put some of those rocket salads on board, and these apples too."
Lighting a huge cigar, the Count grinned with pride as the trolley, now laden with stock, was ready for its maiden trip. "I should really have a safety helmet," said Mouldy, "and you shouldn't be smoking as it's banned on the island."
"Oh, stop being a sissy,"
chuntered Count Rubbish, pulling the starter cord of the motor on the turbo trolley. As the engine fired up, grass cuttings still stuck to it sprayed out, showering the Count from head to toe in the process.
"Wicked!"
cried out Stinky Sock, laughing so much his stomach hurt. Chapter 13. Count Rubbish launches rocket salad. Mouldy just sat in the trolley, his nerves in tatters. All of a sudden, reality had dawned on him. He was actually going to drive it. His bullish behaviour had now disappeared, replaced by slumped shoulders and a stern look. Then the sight of Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 dismounting from their bikes close by got his heart pounding. It was time to make a dash for it. "I'm out of here!" he shrieked, pressing the trolley's accelerator.
"Stop!"
screamed Count Rubbish, pulling the cigar from his mouth and throwing it away. Regrettably for him and Mouldy, the cigar butt fell into the trolley, igniting the fireworks. Explosions of colour filled the sky, whilst the trolley itself rocked from side to side, causing the steering wheel to fall off. Wobbling helplessly on the bucket inside the trolley, Mouldy scorched past Captain Satsuma and his team at a dynamic speed. More loud bangs followed by a cascade of colours from the rockets lit up the skyline. Remnants of scorched lettuce leaves drifted slowly downwards before settling on the road and pavement. Behind, absolute carnage was taking place. A rocket whistled past Stinky Sock's left ear before smashing through Count Rubbish's shop window. Count Rubbish cringed as the rocket ploughed into his meat pie stand. The stand shattered into fragments and collapsed. Pies were splattered everywhere, the gravy from them seeping across the floor and under the other fixtures.
Don't just stand there, do something,
the Count told Bruiser Gnome and Stinky Sock Pixie.
We're just going on our lunch break, so we'll take a look when we get back,
replied Bruiser as he and Stinky Sock took out their sandwiches. Inside the trolley, the accelerator was now jammed, leaving Mouldy with no option but to pick up the bag of bricks and heave it over the side. But the bag hadn't been attached correctly, and it just lay in the middle of the road. Mouldy covered his eyes as the out-of-control trolley ploughed through a wooden farm gate into a field. Captain Satsuma, back on his hoverbike, was chasing after the trolley. Stopping for mere seconds, the captain reached into his pocket and took out his Sumawang. Taking aim, he hurled it at the trolley, splitting the string, holding the engine, causing it to break loose and crash to the ground. Skidding to a standstill, the trolley came to rest with its front lodged against a large oak tree. The Sumawang, meanwhile, had spun back safely into Captain Satsuma's hand. Captain Satsuma was first to reach the field, closely followed by the Frugee 4. Bringing up the rear came Count Rubbish, who was riding Stinky Sock's pushbike. "You had a lucky escape there," Captain Satsuma told the glum-looking Mouldy. "Whatever are you thinking of? Getting involved in all these crazy plans? Gather your senses and come here with us. Count Rubbish values my worth and importance. So if you think I'm going back to that crummy Planet Superseed with you, then you'd better think again," said the disgruntled Mouldy. "How wonderful and kind that brother of mine is. That's all I ever heard. Well, I'm sick of it. I don't want to be like him. I want to be bad, really bad." Smug-looking Count Rubbish strolled over to Mouldy, who was sitting amongst what was left of the stock in his trolley. Laughing out loud, the Count looked at Captain Satsuma and his team before beginning a barrage of taunts.
"Oh dear, you've had a wasted journey, haven't you? Coming all this way for nothing. And he's agreed to sell me that potion you're after."
"What are you talking about?" asked Miss Sweetcorn. "We don't know anything about a potion." Producing a bag of gold coins from his trouser pocket, Count Rubbish handed them to Mouldy.
"Give me the potion now,"
demanded the Count. Chapter 14. Captain Satsuma admits defeat. Mouldy slowly unzipped his overnight bag and reached inside. Taking out the tube of toothpaste, he handed it to Count Rubbish. As he did, a high-pitched buzzing noise reverberated from the trees above. Slipping the tube into his coat pocket, the Count gazed around, looking for the source of the buzzing. "I think we'll be on our way," said Captain Satsuma. "But Captain," said a shocked Cape Pear. "I know when we're beaten," said Captain Satsuma. "It's far too dangerous here. Come on, everyone, back to the podship." Very reluctantly, the Frugee 4 began to follow him.
"Chickens!"
shouted Count Rubbish, swatting away a wasp from in front of his face.
You've given up so easily, you pathetic creatures. Terrified I'll use the potion on you.
Keep going, Captain Satsuma told his team. I don't think he'll be gloating for long. Those bruised apples in the trolley have attracted a swarm of angry wasps. Mouldy must have disturbed their nest when he bumped into the tree. Sure enough, Captain Satsuma was right, because seconds later, cries of panic could be heard from behind. Count Rubbish and Evil Spud Mouldy were flaying their arms about in desperation as hundreds of wasps surrounded them.
Why, you little striped vermin!
Shrieked out Count Rubbish as a couple of the wasps shot up the back of his coat. Shaking his coat furiously, the Count dislodged the toothpaste tube from his pocket.
There's two on your hat,
said Mouldy, taking a swing at them with his overnight bag. The bag thudded against Count Rubbish's hat, ramming it down so hard that it wedged over his eyes. Staggering around with his hat well and truly stuck, the Count stumbled head first into the tree before falling face down in a cowpat. More and more wasps began to converge on Mouldy. The sheer din from their buzzing increased to a near deafening volume. So dense was the swarm that Mouldy was hidden from the view of Captain Satsuma and his team. Quick, turn your pea shooter onto maximum. Aim at the swarm of wasps and fire when I say so, said the captain, taking out his pip blaster. Fire! He shouted. The impact of the peas and pips scattered the wasps in every direction. Kate Pear, Miss Sweetcorn and Undercover Carrot had got some water jet sprays ready, then turned them on the wasps. Within moments, all the wasps had dispersed as quickly as they had gathered. Chapter 15. Very expensive toothpaste. Birdsong could be heard in the distance, and calmness had returned all around. Not only had the wasps gone, but Mouldy had vanished too. Beside the upturned turbo trolley, a small white tube lay on the ground. The now dishevelled and unsteady Count Rubbish had eventually managed to remove his hat and got back to his feet. Spotting the tube close by, he rushed over and snatched it up.
The potion! I've still got it!
He rejoiced, hardly able to contain his delight. Clutching the tube in his right hand, he danced a jig before looking at it more closely and reading the label.
Toothpaste?
Screamed the Count on reading the label.
Why, the thieving little rogue! I've given him all that money for toothpaste.
Jumping up and down in a mad rage, he flung the tube of toothpaste across the field. Disappointed, are you? Inquired Captain Satsuma as he strolled over to Count Rubbish. Never mind, at least you could have had nice clean teeth for a while. Rather expensive though, from the sound of things. Captain Satsuma collected the tube from where Count Rubbish had thrown it. Unzipping his waistcoat pocket, he put it safely inside before joining his team. What do we do now? Asked Undercover Carrot. You just can't disappear into thin air like Mouldy has. It's just not possible, is it? Oh, he's around somewhere. Don't you worry about that, said Captain Satsuma. He's slipped away for now, but he'll turn up somewhere soon. When he does, one thing's for sure. Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 will be there too. Come on, everyone. There's work to do. Count Rubbish trudged slowly back up the road, passing Bruiser and Stinky Sock on the way.
We're back now,
said Bruiser.
Will you be reducing the price of those damaged pies?
Count Rubbish just turned and glared at them.
"Miserable old skinflint!"
shouted Stinky Sock.
"What have you done with my bike? You'll have to buy me a new one if you've lost it."
Chapter 16. No sign of Count Rubbish. The following morning, Count Rubbish's shop frontage was boarded up. A sign on the door read "Closed," and there was no sign of the Count himself. As fishing boats set sail from the harbour, a small bicycle lay abandoned on the shale beach. Water dripped from its frame as a piece of seaweed wrapped itself around a pedal. Back on the school field, the large hole had been filled in. Where the hole had been, there were planted vegetable beds containing carrots, peppers and sweetcorn. Behind them stood a young pear tree, its leaves glistening in the sunlight. Placed on the step leading into the school was a basket full of Satsumas and a note saying, "Remember your 5 a day. Stay healthy and take care." A pretty young elf named Elise picked up a Satsuma from the basket as she arrived for school. Pausing for a moment or two, she looked up into the sky, smiling as she did. Once inside, Elise waited in excited anticipation for her first lesson. "Today," said her teacher, "we're going to talk about going food shopping." Oh, what a super story that was! Evil Spud Mouldy and Count Rubbish most certainly had some fiendish plans. I don't know about you, but I would rather eat fresh fruit and vegetables. I'm so glad that King Edward could call upon his intelligence service 5 daily to come and help save the day. Captain Satsuma and the Frugee 4 made a brilliant elite team. I wonder if you could think about some of the fruit and vegetables that you've already tried and liked, and maybe have a think about trying some that you've never tried before. I hope you've enjoyed today's Shed Time story, and if you want to, you can like, share, follow and subscribe to Shed Time Stories. Then you will be ready for the next book for us to share together. Bye-bye.